Today I'm joined by Gary Clark. I grew up in a place where music on the radio genuinely got me through difficult days. Hearing songs like Mary's Prayer on Radio 2 had this warmth and escape to them. Gary's music has always had that feeling for me, where everything suddenly feels a bit more hopeful. And that carries on today with his amazing songs from Sing Street, the wonderful Sing Street, and I can't wait to see his work in the upcoming Power Ballad. Our interview starts now. Right now. So Gary, thank you so much for doing this. Welcome.
You're super welcome. It's nice to be here. Nice to chat to you.
It's I can't understate how much your music means to me, and I know millions of other people.
Thank you.
Taking you back to the beginning of your career, or when you first started realizing people wanted to listen to you, did you ever realize, or did you understand anything of the emotional importance that people had put on your songs?
Not so much that way around, but I've loved the way music makes me feel and wanted to make other people feel that through my music. And even to this day, and I've actually talked to John Carney, the director I work with, quite a lot about this. Is like the brain over heart thing. And I can't sign off when I say sign off on someone, I won't send something in unless I go, I'm really feeling. Oh, I suppose my heart is always the rudder rather than the brain box, you know. The brain's handy. You need it sometimes to kind of put stuff in order, but I've got to feel it, you know.
Yeah, and the fact that other people can get that connection with you through the emotion that you're putting into it, it's a real two-way thing. And I'd imagine when you're a young man thrashing away and playing your music, it might be a bit not intimidating, but feel quite a large responsibility when you hear people talk about how much they love your work.
Yeah, what's funny is like social media has made that in a weird way happen more now than it did back when I was making records. You know, like because I've had quite a long. I mean, I was an artist with the band Danny Wilson, and then I kind of went into production and recording with other people. So I was kind of out of the spotlight since I was quite, when I'm in my early 30s or something like that. But the kind of the arbiters of taste at that point, particularly when we started in the late 80s, were these music journalists, and they in things like NME and Melody Maker were very powerful, and they could be so cruel. I mean, it was sometimes like really hurtful. So I just kind of stopped reading them. But then nowadays, what's happened with social media is that people send me private messages on Facebook or whatever, and they tell me what songs mean to them and in their lives, and sometimes played at weddings and funerals and these kind of big massive events in people's lives, and that's when you feel it a lot more. I mean, obviously you used to get that a little bit when you'd meet people when you were out playing live, but it's not as much as now. It's interesting. It's really good.
Yeah, and it's funny you mention about the NME and Melody Maker and things like that. They were particularly harsh, and probably because of the location of the people writing the magazine. They were particularly harsh about Scottish musicians at the time. The blue-eyed soul people were kind of lumped together with that title and seen as not very cool. However, they were selling millions upon millions of records. You and your band and your music never really felt like it stayed in one genre for too long, which made you stand apart for me. I guess, is that what lends to you becoming a songwriter, that you can, jump between different genres and styles, and you have this kind of eclectic love of other types of music? You didn't just stick to the one area that was very popular at the time.
Well, I mean, some of that's just background. I grew up with a really varied, a lot of very varied but great music in my house. Like, my mum was into stuff like the Beach Boys, and even Barbara Streisand, the Carpenters, kind of soft, rocky kind of stuff. And then my dad was into big band, swing, jazz, and he loved songwriters. He used to always talk about the people who wrote the songs. And so I think that had a big influence as well. But I grew up with a kind of eclectic, and you've got to remember, like when I was at school, we're talking about those formative years, like 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. The music on the music that was being played on the radio went from glam rock, which David Bowie's still one of my superheroes, Mark Bolan, David Bowie, and then went through to punk happening in, around 76, 77. And then the sort of new wave bands that came out of that. You had the American side of that, which was Talking Heads, and I just absorbed all of it and loved it all. And where it's been handy, I think, is, well, in the portion of my career that was spent writing and producing records for other people, I could draw from a lot of different places, and sort of make a modern record, but like I could go back to Mark Bolan if I needed to, or I could go back to David Bowie if I needed to, and pull elements of that in, and then the sort of last about 10 years of my life, and we'll probably get into this later, but John Carney called me to do Sing Street, and it kind of changed everything that I was doing in a brilliant way. I ended up doing loads of film stuff and TV stuff with John, but also that led to a lot of theatre stuff. And in theatre, you're writing for characters. You've got to be really adaptable because they different characters have different sounds. Similarly, in John's movies, that it's not like all one thing. There's quite a lot of different sounds go into it, So I find it a real advantage now. But at the time, just to go back to the beginning of your question, which is a really good question, I probably confused people, and certainly record companies, they like you to stay in your lane. And, so if you have a hit record, they want you to make something very similar again and again. And, not just me, but the other guys in the band, we were all very eclectic, had very eclectic taste, and sort of mixed it all up in a mad concoction. Which,
you're right. In this, like I was saying to you earlier on before we were recording, when I was listening back to some of the tracks, some of my records, and how there was just polar opposite. The next song was, or the next single was a polar opposite to the single before it. And that's what I really enjoy, because that's how my brain works. I follow lots of different. That sounds good. I'll listen to 10 of those, and then I'll listen to some of these.
We're clearly very similar.
Yes, yeah, maybe that's what that's what is the kind of draws you to somebody's music, is that kind of, for example, what I like about, there's one common factor. I like the warmth of the songs, but there's also a melancholy there, and it's not a cloying melancholy, which you might get with some artists. It's a real earned melancholy that goes along with that warmth. And I think you were talking before about head and heart. Is that something you consider when you're writing? Does it go down to this word evokes this feeling more than that word? Is it like essentially like?
Well, I do get quite myopic about, but all of it. But lyrics, I love the jigsaw puzzle of lyrics, and I take a lot of time on them, and you're balancing emotion with rhythm, with singability, it's very three-dimensional. It's probably five-dimensional, but and musicality. Lyrics have to sound really good to make you feel the right thing. If there's something just a bit clunky, unless you're doing that deliberately to make it kind of edgy, it has to just flow really well. But when you look at it for me, like if I can look at it on the page and go, okay, that takes me on a journey a journey that I want to go on, and it makes me feel just reading it on the page. That's before you get into the married with the music, you know. I'm not saying before because they're both happening in parallel, but lyrics are really important to me. I grew up in a kind of mainly sort of Irish Catholic family, and whenever family got together for parties or whatever, people would get like out accordions and sing the songs of their era. So you got to remember they would have been older than me, and so my grandparents were singing things from the 1930s, and my aunts would be singing things from the 1950s. But what they all had in common is that they had to work in that situation with little, with minimal or no accompaniment, you know. So you had songs that had very strong sort of narrative to them, and very strong emotional warmth. It's what you're describing, you know. And so I think that was kind of in my DNA from early, that thing of like how songs affect people, you know, or can. And I have to say, I still think I'm absolutely in love with songs and songwriting as much as I ever was, maybe more. Because the more I've sort of worked in different disciplines and the more I've done it, the more I realize how songwriters can put into 3 minutes something that might take a filmmaker 2 hours or a play to make you feel the same thing, you know. It's a different medium, obviously. You go and put the song on again if you love it, but it's a really great song, can take you on an amazing journey and sort of learning. I think I sort of had a lot of natural early instincts from just listening to records and listen from all different genres. But I've really worked on perfecting it, and you know, I can look back at earlier songs, including things like Mary's Prayer, and see the holes in it. Even though, you know, spiritually I wouldn't change it because it's changed my life in many ways, you know. But I can look at it and go, I wouldn't have done that now, you know. It's quite interesting. You know,
well, somebody mentioned to me today it was their sister's favourite song, and it was somebody I used to work with, and I was like, oh well, you know, I won't be able to do this evening. I'm talking with Gary Clark, and she said, oh, my sister's favourite song, Mary's Prayer. That was the first thing she said.
So it was good to hear.
Yeah, so I don't think she'd want you to change it, and I don't.
No, it does sort of weird things, like it flips tense and things. But actually, I can also see in it the journey that I still think you need to go on through a song. You know, it expands, the lyric expands as you go through it. But it's also more abstract, and I think I've got better at not hiding behind poetry, if you know what I mean. It's actually harder to do, is to tell the truth.
Well, it's braver, isn't it? It's braver. It's like when I'm teaching writing, and you know, and everybody goes, oh, we'll just write what you know. However, sometimes when you're very in a tumultuous part in your life, you don't really know how you feel about something, or if you do, you don't really want to share it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've said that in the past about writing songs about breakups or whatever, something that's really emotional is going to. I'm never very good at writing about it at the time, but I can kind of many years later sort of, you know, I can extract the feelings that, you know, just because as human beings we all go through those things, and it actually helps you to be able to write better. But at the time, I think you're too specifically in it or something, you know.
Yeah, you're not. Maybe not. Well, like you're definitely reflecting in the moment is a almost impossible skill, and it could potentially be. I always think of like what I thought a tortured artist was supposed to be like when I was like 20 or 19. And, you know, and the music I listened to at the time, and what I did when I wrote and how I wrote, it was very much like I thought I was in a movie, or I was doing something that I'd seen somebody else do.
Right. Yeah.
And it's funny because there's like I think there's always a kernel of emotion, and I think your songs, to me, there's like a familiar emotional side to it, that but it never feels copied, like you say. It's like memories that I haven't lived, but I'm aware of what that might feel like, if that makes sense. Like, are you conscious of kind of putting things in that might be touchstones to other people when you write them, or is it very all about you?
All about me.
Yeah.
um, I'm really having to try to think about the answer to that, because we probably, use things from culture,
Yes.
and you're probably in the back of your mind aware of what that's painting, and what
Mm.
you're not. So that's all in the kind of like imagery of songs. But in terms of the feeling, that's always really personal, I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
Yeah. You
doesn't
got.
even just mean the meaning of the song, actually. It's just the feeling.
Mm.
Hard to
Mm.
describe. But I think that is what ultimately touches people or doesn't, what sounds real or what sounds fake. And by the way, it's not always just emotional songs. You've got to feel that, like, particularly with John Carney, like, he loves songs that are a bit mad and funny. And,
Yes.
I've got to kind of get into that headspace as well. And again, if it doesn't make me laugh, like, what's the point? If it doesn't make me feel good or joyous or whatever it is that you're supposed to feel, it's not all about just sad songs. But the same rule applies for me, is that I've got to try and feel it. I've got to try and make something that I can feel, and hopefully
Yeah. Yeah.
somebody else will feel it. And I guess
There's
that I
like.
can't trust that somebody else will feel it if I don't feel it.
Well, yeah, they know if you're like people know if you're, if you're being genuine. I really think it does come across, when because you can tell when people are not. And um, without, I really do want to jump into Sing Street in a bit, but I've got some other sort of, before I really go granular on that, and you'll be, if you'd be going crazy because of all the amount of questions I'll ask. But um, that idea of you talking about working with somebody else, and maybe them wanting to do something silly, or referencing something else. I think that what you've perfected with yourself and John Carney is that synthesizing a moment or a feeling, referencing an influence, but it being completely unique. And for
Mm.
somebody who doesn't, maybe I can think of West Side Story and Guys and Dolls, but I'm not like a musical fan. Um,
They're two very good ones that you just picked.
yeah, well,
Probably my two
Sing Street
favourite
has
musicals.
become one of my favorite films of all time. I feel like,
Oh, amazing.
um, and for what makes it stand out for me, and I am going into it now, I suppose, is is how the songs tell the story, how the songs are vital, and how they work on their own. Like, they're not just like singing about walking down the street because the character's walking down the street.
Yeah.
They move the story on,
Mm-hmm.
and what I really love about that, I guess, is that voice. But you talk about humor. Sorry, this is really rambling and just telling you how great the film is. But the bit at the end of the film where it's playing the songs over the credits, and it's you and
Oh,
John,
yeah.
and you're coming up with the song as you're thinking
That's
of it.
funny, yeah.
That is such a warm moment. It always makes me laugh, and it always, because it's like, could it be more silly at this moment? Could it be a bit? And you're
Well,
like,
actually, I remember quite clearly telling the band that they were playing too well.
yeah,
No, like, you've got to be really sticky on the drums. That, like, people who are amazing musicians, you go, no, like, remember what you were like when you just got your first drum kit.
yeah.
So yeah, it was
Oh,
amazing that got captured, actually, because I didn't even know it existed until I went to see the film, and then it came up at the end, and I was like, I
it's
remember the day
so
so clearly
lovely.
because it was so fun. And the actual guitar riff of that, John said he had it from his school band. So it's
No
really
way.
genuinely, him pulling back into the past. But just on what you were saying there, I think it's I can't take all the credit for that, because John writes those kind of spaces into the script knowing what he wants the song to do most of the time. I would say 90% of the time. And sometimes you'll know what it wants to do lyrically, but sometimes it's more of a feeling or a description of what it needs to achieve, you know. And then we have a very sort of long distance, because I'm in Scotland and he's in Dublin. We have a kind of long distance ping pong kind of a way of writing songs, where he'll send me something and I'll work a bit on it and send it back to him. And but just going back to the songs in the movies, John has a really good vision for that stuff. And even when it's something, I'm particularly thinking about Drive It Like You Stole It. When that was one that he knew what he wanted it to do, but he didn't have an idea that he wanted himself to do it. And he basically said, he sent me a brief, and he was quite specific about what it had to feel like, but he didn't want it on the nose, you know, like he didn't want it to say what was going on. And he also said, I want the vibe to be like Huey Lewis and the News meets Hall & Oates, you know. So
that's insane.
And it was written quite quickly because his brief was so good, you know. I sort of sat down and I thought, well, the first thing was Huey Lewis and the News always had these kind of punchlines to their songs. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. I also get Shania Twain. There's always these kind of, that don't impress me much, or man, I feel like a woman, you know. Huey Lewis always had these, that's the power of love, you know. Everything would lead up to this one punchy thing. And I went back through my phone, because I'm always taking notes, you know, just because you never know where you're going to just need an inspirational thing. And I found the title, Drive It Like You Stole It. And then I started playing the big synth riff, which was the first thing that came out. And I listened to a bit of Hall & Oates, and Daryl Hall I was already a fan, but I hadn't listened for a while. And he has this way of singing big intervals between the notes. And I was trying to get my head into that, you know. So you get you just can't stand the weight. There's kind of like these quite strong intervals.
I hear that.
So all those bits kind of like came together really quickly because John's brief was so perfect, you know.
Wow.
So it's definitely a collaboration, even when it's a song that I end up writing. But most of the stuff the two of us write, you know, together. So.
Wow, do you know, to give you credit, I was reading Empire the other day, and essentially John's quote was, you know, we write them all together, but Gary does the best bits.
Oh, geez, well, that's not true, but thank you, Mr. Conor.
It was a nice quote, and it was a really interesting article all about Power Ballad, and of course you'll know about it because you're interviewed in it as well, aren't you? You're in the.
I don't think I saw the final thing, but I remember doing the interview. Yeah.
Oh, I'll send it to you.
Thanks, man.
But yeah, it's you know, it's funny you mentioned Huey Lewis, because when I try and tell people to watch Sing Street, and if they're a bit like me and they're a little bit musical film averse, I say to them, just think essentially it's Back to the Future. It's an Irish Back to the Future, and I wonder if that was ever like a touchstone when writing the songs, or if you know it was when writing the film, because there's so many similarities. There's the dance, like you say, some of the songs, the way they work, the story isn't a million miles away, the fantasy side of it.
Right. Yeah. I actually think that the Back to the Future was mentioned as a ref for the way that the whole prom scene dance thing would look and would play, you know. I think that was quite deliberate on John's part, but I can't really speak for him. But I seem to remember that it was
thought I had to mention it just because you'd said Huey Lewis, and I was like, that is just a mind blower for me, because that's the way I kind of sell the film to people because I'm always trying to get people to watch it. I'm like, oh no, you'll love this, you'll love this. I did a watch party. This is a bit of a. I'll cut this out because it's not. It's a. But I did a watch party where I was watching the film, had my guitar, singing along, and I must have had it too loud or I was singing too perfectly because it can't be that. And I got a copyright strike.
Brilliant.
And it wasn't even on screen. It was just I was just watching. So I just thought, yeah, I maybe was getting a bit too into it. And I guess it would be a good time to go. It really does lift me, that song, "Drive It Like You Stole It." It's euphoric, and writing a euphoric song is something that you don't really get that as much now. You don't really have that. Like you say, I guess people say power ballads, but like it is something where you automatically find yourself driving the car a little bit faster when you hear it.
Yeah.
So you
I
might
mean,
be
I've always
for a
kind
few
of
points.
said that the writing euphoric songs or writing joy is harder than writing, more emotional things. Only in the sense that at any moment you could just fall into cheesy. It's like it's such a thin line, and also, talking about Sing Street and those songs, we were deliberately kind of pulling in all these things from the 80s, and so there was a deliberate element of cheesiness, but you can't cross over. So it's such a fine balance,
It is. It's so knowing in places. The what I was going to ask you about that as well was like you could have made that as like a jukebox musical with just some of the songs by artists of the time, like that are that kind of complement the songs on the soundtrack. But I'm so glad that you didn't. And I'm so glad that that's
Oh
never
my!
really an option with a John Carney. Yeah, because
Changed my life.
all of
So
the songs, all of those songs are just like every single one of them works perfectly for that film. And you could listen to, and I know I said this earlier on, but you can listen to them in isolation. They feel like singles
Good.
because I guess you're referencing singles as well that were
Yeah, I guess
that's in there too. So they feel like singles.
That's good.
Which is which I find like almost impossible to comprehend sometimes when I'm listening to the soundtrack, because we are in an age where skipping through and just listening to the odd song here or there is more the way, and I listen to the whole thing.
Okay.
Even though I wasn't like the world's biggest Maroon 5 fan, but I think that's the best thing Adam Levine's ever put on. I was going to say on wax. It's just a beautiful song. Yeah, on celluloid. Yeah, and I'm jumping round to the end of the film, but that needed to happen, didn't it? Because it couldn't be Conor singing that. It wouldn't. It needed to be at that moment. It needed to be about him rather than by him.
Yeah, I mean that is actually the only song that I wasn't involved in the movie. It was actually added later, and we tried a few things there. There was, if I remember correctly, the song that actually got me the job, the first song I wrote as a kind of basically, I got a call from. This is at the beginning of making the movie. I got a call from. It was a music publisher saying the film director John Carney wants to talk to you, and I had just seen Once, and I was like a fan. And Begin Again, his second movie, hadn't come out at that point; he just made it, and I said I'd love to talk to him, And so we got on the phone, and he asked me to basically. He was thinking about getting different people who had made records. Because it's semi-autobiographical, that whole Sing Street thing. His brother used to play, John's brother used to turn them onto records when he was a kid. And John's idea initially was to get people from those bands that his brother had said, listen to this and blah, 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 to write songs for it. And I, luckily enough, Danny Wilson, the first album, he says he remembers his brother playing it to him, and he could remember cycling to school with his yellow sports Walkman, you know, the 80s Walkman, and listening to that record, you know. And so he sent me a couple of briefs. One of them was actually Driver Like You Stole It, but before I hit that one, I did this other song, and it was when Rufina, I don't know how much you remember in the film, but when Rufina was giving up her dreams of going to London, and Conor was kind of saying, I think in the movie it's now the scene on the park bench, if I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong, but initially it was a slightly different scene, and Conor was going to write a song where he dreamed her dreams for her, because, you know, that was my idea for the song, and I wrote a song called Dream for You. And we looked at that as the end song. Weirdly enough, the other day I actually found a clip of that whole end scene where it's Dream for You.
Oh, wow.
And John still wasn't sure that it was the right tone. And really, I think the only reason we tried it there was because the scene had been cut, and he really liked the song, you know. But like, we tried a few different things. There was even one thing where I was actually singing Go Now. I remember that really, really clearly, like on the outro of this thing. And then John, well, basically they went into editing the whole picture. And he must have been looking at that scene all the time and going, and at that time I kind of was out of touch with him. I'd sort of done my thing. And I didn't know when I'd see the film again, or even if it would come out, you know. And then he told me that they'd written a song for the end. Him and Glenn Hansard had wrote it, and Adam Levine was going to sing it. I think Adam Levine's got a songwriting credit on it as well. I think he did write some of it. I don't know what. But that was, that was the story of that end stuff. It was the one thing that I wasn't hands-on on at all, you know.
It does feel very separate, but in a way, I guess that's what it needed, you know, to kind of put a bow on it. That
I think that's what John needed.
Yeah, however, like the you know, every moment leading up to that earns the emotion that maybe I've got when I hear that, because I was probably just chopping onions. That's probably all it was. But you know, there's moments where you become very proud of Conor, and there's moments where you kind of the songs tell you more about the depth of his feeling than he's doing, and it's even. But then there's other moments where you're allowed to kind of breathe and laugh. Like, I always laugh at a certain moment in the Riddle of the Model, where, you know, you'll know which moment it is. It's
yeah. Well, you know, I got to tell you that when we went to put that on stage in New York, they wouldn't let us do that. That was
would they not?
No, it was deemed to be racist. Oh. But like, I could think of 1,000 records from that time where they were using various cultural musical.
Well, that's Bowie, isn't it? It's China Girl.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's so fun. I mean, just the fact that you know, the way that their dress evolves, and you're looking at somebody and you're thinking, there's a young Elvis Costello and there's a Robert Smith, and
that bit's just. I mean, I could take no credit for that. That bit is just a work of genius for me. I think it's amazing, and it reminds you of just how quickly something that's cool when you're at school becomes uncool, and you've got to get off of it really quick, you know. Flared trousers like suddenly become like, you know, punk skinny jeans.
You take that risk, and you're either going to be the coolest person in school or the laughing stock.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't know if you mind me literally going through song by song, because I'm just so interested in the development of them, and
sure.
You know, especially because they're a bit like we were saying before about your background, and you know how I listened to 4 Danny Wilson songs and each of them are polar opposites. We talked the Riddle of the Model, and then I was going to ask you about Up as well, because that's a very that is a really emotional song and a beautiful song, a lovely little ballad. What was the creation of Up? Do you again to get like notes of what's going to happen in that part of the film?
Well, that's a great example of something that started with John and I finished it off. The whole of that verse section, not lyrically, I did a lot of the lyrics, but like um, he had done it. He'd done a guide vocal that that was all there. He'd recorded a kind of demo of it with the band in the studio, which turned out to be the same band that we recorded the final version with. But it had no chorus, and it was really early on in the relationship with me and John, and I wasn't sure how much he wanted me to change, and I was being very cautious. So I kind of got into the lyric, and he loved what I did with the lyric, and then at the end, I actually sang as an ad lib over the chords at the end. I sang the "Going Up, She Lights You Up," I did that whole thing as an ad lib. And when I sent it to John, John just went, "That bit at the end, that's the chorus." And so it's a great example of our collaboration, actually. It's a
Well, that
almost
ties in with what
perfect
he was
example.
saying in that interview. It's like he's like it's the best bit. Yeah.
I don't know about that. I actually think the verse in that song is beautiful.
I mean, it is. It's they're all little perfect pop little bundles where there isn't any. I don't feel any weakness in any of them. They're like.
Thank you.
No, and it sounds like and I don't just say this. It's not like whoever I'm interviewing is suddenly the best, person I've ever met. I just genuinely think these these songs in Sing Street. Every time I watch it, my connection to them and my love of them gets better. And it's a bit like reading a good book, where you get something different out of it.
Yeah. Do you think though? I mean, because this is for me the magic of music in film, and not a lot of, well, hardly anyone makes musicals like John does, musical films. Obviously there's a rich history of musical films, but he does this thing where people don't just burst into song, they have a reason. So the songs are kind of part of the fabric of their journey, and they only happen when they're necessary. But anyway, like, to go back to what was the broader point, film was always such a huge influence on me, and even there are bits of titles and things and lyrics and stuff in the Danny Wilson things that go right back there that come from movies, and the power of music and film together. I also grew up with a lot of my dad loved, you mentioned, I think it's maybe before we came on here, but Guys and Dolls, like the Hollywood version of that with Sinatra and Brando and stuff. My dad loved that. And West Side Story again, So I'm wandering off here, but I'm talking about the power of when music and film come together. The films is made better and the music is made better, and it becomes this other thing. And I always loved it so much, but I had no idea how to get into it. And I'd started to get a few songs placed in movies, so I was lucky enough to be able to see that thing when you go into a cinema and you hear something that you've done with a bit of film. But I'd never written specifically for a film until John asked me to do that, to collaborate with him on Sing Street. So, and it literally has changed my life. It's changed it in such a positive way, because I've got a whole new other reason for writing, and each script brings emotional situations, characters, all those things that I don't want to write about myself anymore when I'm like in my 60s. It's like, so the gift of writing for John's beautiful films or for theatre is an incredible thing for to happen at this sort of stage of my life. And I think I almost feel like everything. I know I'm wandering around a lot here, but I
No,
feel like
no, I'm
it's.
loving it.
I feel like it's kind of like happened at the right time in a weird way. I don't know if I would have got it right when I was younger. Like there's something about the way I've had to earn it, and I've had to learn how to write with other artists, which again is not dissimilar. It's not the same, but it's not dissimilar to writing for character. Because like if you have you know, a pop star or rock star comes in to work with you, and you start the day by talking about life, like what's happening, and we'll listen to music and we'll try to get into what they're listening to and where their heads are. Again, it's quite handy that I've got a sort of rich kind of tapestry of music to sort of draw from, because somebody could say, I'm listening to Thin Lizzy or something, and my brain can go there, you know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
So anyway, I'm wandering around a lot, but the point I'm trying to make is that I'm so excited to be making music and in film and theatre, and it has not disappointed me. It's better than I could have ever imagined, like the process of doing it. And the result, when you see it come together, is quite extraordinary. It's an incredible.
Is it different
thing.
seeing the play and when you first saw the film and like say the premiere or the first time you saw a rough cut, seeing it on stage? Is it a similar feeling?
It's actually different. It's very different, but then the stage version of anything is never going to be exactly the same. There's just different ways you have to work to make things work. But the biggest difference, and this is for me, the exciting thing about theatre, is the liveness of it. Like we just put Sing Street on at the Lyric Hammersmith just past summer, and it's a really young cast, and they've got to be able to play the music live. Like in the movie, don't want to, ruin people's whatever the word is, illusions or whatever. But the people who are playing the music are not the people you're seeing playing it on screen. Obviously, Ferdia did sing all the songs, but we made a band with members of Sinead O'Connor's band, and John and I playing, and the real Eamon, interestingly enough, because in the movie he's got his friend Eamon who plays all the different instruments.
Yeah, with his bunnies.
Yeah, exactly. One of my favourite scenes ever is when Mark does that thing at the end when he's just played the congas and he goes like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, the real Eamon played bass on it. Eamon Griffin, who was at school with John and in John's school band and plays all the instruments. So anyways, it was played by a bunch of seasoned musicians and acted by these kids. Whereas for the theatre thing, we had to find kids who could actually play this music, and act. So it was the audition process was quite grueling. But the reward is like seeing the thing live. I'm just talking about the music at the moment, but there's so many other things that are a great joy about it. But seeing the music come to life, and it is real human beings playing it live every single night. And it actually sounded so good that people were saying to me, "Is that recorded?" And I said, "No, it's live. They were playing it live." And the danger of that is that anything can happen, and sometimes does, and you just have to get out of it, But I saw a real young audience coming to see it and switching off their phones. Nobody was doom scrolling, and it's like the opposite of AI. It's like it's happening right in front of you. And that is the big difference. Because with film, obviously, you get to edit it, you get to record pre-records in studios and all kinds of things. But the theatre thing is far more dangerous.
Yeah. I just think it must have been such a daunting task casting the musical, because you've got every single character in the film is perfect. Like
Yeah.
there isn't anyone where you go, oh, well, you could switch that person out. They're all vital to
Yeah.
that success.
No, I agree. You almost have to throw that away in a weird kind of a way. The only thing I would say is that the guy who played Conor, Sheridan Tansley, and it was his first audition, but when he walked in, I thought, he's Conor. It was just like, and it was physical. He kind of physically had that feeling about him. But when he started to sing, I was just like, this is the perfect person for this, you know. Other things like Darren, who plays the manager, the character in the film is just so incredible that you can't go, we're going to try and copy that. You have to find another Darren and another way to work it, you know, because like you say, I don't, you know, you just, the casting was pretty great in John's films, I have to say, you know, which again, I had nothing to do with.
It's just wild to have all of those things fall into line, and like I said before, the music enhances everything, but it would work with the music, it would work without the music, it would work just the music on its own. Element is great, and I think that when I'm listening to the songs in isolation, it takes me to those exact moments in the film. So like you know, To Find You is such a lovely song. And in the film, when I first listened to it, it kind of drifted past me, and now it's one of my favorites. And maybe because I was so into like Riddle of the Model and Girls and those and Drive It Like You Stole It, which are like,
well, they've got more energy and more fun, haven't they? So they kind of like hit you in
yeah,
a different kind of a way, I suppose, you know. But To Find You's become one of those songs that I was talking about earlier, that a lot of people, particularly young people getting married, are using that as their first dance, you know. And it's it's, I'm trying to think back to the creation of that, because that is the only other one that I just wrote on my own, and it was, there wasn't even really a brief for it. Like, that was the one that John said, I need Conor to sort of show his heart at some point, and I need, like, it's like Conor's love song to refine it, I think he described it as. And I actually, it took quite a while to write that song, but like, I wanted something that had a slight Irish kind of, or certainly Celtic sort of fabric to it, you know, something that.
well, I was going to ask that about whether accent ever comes into it when you're writing for other people, and you know, or rhythm, you know, because obviously you're Scottish, you've worked with Australian people, you've worked with American people, you've worked with male and female artists. You know, accent and rhythm. What does that come into the songwriting process, or is it just this would sound good for that person, or not?
It definitely comes into the demoing process. I don't always sort of use accents, but there are certain things, particularly the more. I'm trying to think of a good example. I mean, to be honest, like the other musical that I'm doing at the moment is Nanny McPhee, and I've been working on it for quite a long time with Emma Thompson, and we write the songs together. She's doing the book and lyrics, and I do lyrics and music. And I do all the demos here, and I have to sing sometimes in that kind of a musical, which is very different from Sing Street. It's more like a traditional musical, if you know what I mean. But sometimes there are 10 characters singing in a song, and they've all got to sound different, so that the director or whoever's hearing the demo can actually understand, oh, that's, you know.
Right.
And in that one, it's so fantasy that there are things like singing post boxes and cows and shit. You know, it's like, and I'm actually not joking. So you got to go, what does a cow sound like? You know, and it actually goes into the writing process in the sense of like, what would it actually? There's even like honestly, in Nanny McPhee, there's actually a flower bed that sings.
Oh wow,
With
that's not.
about 20 flowers going. Anyway, I won't spoil it all that. But
No, it sounds so interesting. I mean, as you were saying that, I was trying to think of other songs that you've been involved in where the person, is from a different culture or a different gender or something. And I was thinking of ones that I had. So when I was looking through, so I bought the single of "Wrong Impression," Natalie Imbruglia.
yeah,
Now, not that she's like going "G'day, mate" when she's singing it, but there's definitely a rhythm to her voice that it's not very like it's definitely not British, if that makes sense.
yeah. The I remember the writing of that song really, really clearly because it happened super quickly. She and I had written a few songs for the album that became White Lily's Island, is what it's called, and and we kind of hit it off musically. We were really working well together, and she said to me when she was leaving, this is when I lived in London, but it was my flat in London at the time we were writing in. And she said as she was leaving that night, you know, I really want to do something like that band, the Sundays. And I went away and so I knew the Sundays, but I just went away and listened to some Sunday stuff. And then I just started playing the guitar. And I came up with a thing, which is very Sundays. It's not a rip-off of anything, but it's in that flavour with those kind of loose, jangly chords. And I played it to her the next day, and she immediately started singing, calling out, And then we worked a bit on the lyrics, and then we got up to where the chorus was going to happen. She goes, I need the rhythm to be like really, didn't want to, and it became what it is now. And
Great song.
it took, I don't know, an hour max or something. Maybe an hour and a half if you put my guitar jamming on from the night before. They're not always that quick, trust me. But that one was fun and quick and just had a vibe from the word go. But in terms of what artists they bring their whole history to the table, like one of the things I've found with Australian artists is the Australian music scene is very live based. And so I don't think I've ever had an Australian artist in the studio, and I've worked with quite a lot of them, who are not incredibly vocally impressive. They're used to working, slogging it in clubs, and they've got power and control and energy, like real energy, And that's just, you're right, it doesn't, I don't know how you define it, but it doesn't sound like British artists. They have their own thing. So
yeah, it's interesting when you listen to phrasing at Eurovision, which obviously was a couple of days ago, and it's something I used to listen to and watch every single year with my grandma. We used to absolutely love watching Eurovision every year, Terry Wogan, and like when you hear the phrasing and the accents of singing what they think is their version of an American song or how an American would sing, there's some unintentional humor there that is quite endearing. So I'm always obsessed with accents and phrasing and even etymology.
You've got a good one yourself, though. You've got a good accent yourself, though.
well, the South Manchester Stockport accent's a strange one because we're not like very nasal like Manchester, but we're also we're a little bit softer, so we're a little bit more palatable than your usual. I hope we are anyway. I don't know. Than sort of your straight up Manc.
Well, Stockport, kind of interestingly enough, back in the Danny Wilson days, I don't anymore so much anyway, but I got quite well known for wearing these hats. And one of the things that kind of triggered it, I had a few hats from secondhand stores and stuff, but
this one.
You'll know this, but well, not so much that. Well, that as well, but there's probably a fedora on one of the other ones. I don't know.
Yes.
But I'm sure you'll know this, but Stockport was the centre of the hat industry in the UK.
I do. I used to work there at the hat factory.
Really?
Yeah,
I actually got a tour of Christie's at one point because we were so famous for wearing hats. But anyway, we went to make the first album in Denmark in a place called Ranners, quite a small town in the middle of Jutland. And there was an old man who was retiring, and he was shutting down his hat shop, and he was selling all these incredible, like Borsalinos and stuff, which are very expensive hats, at cut down prices because it was a closing down sale. And the shop was called Stockport
No way. How
in the middle
strange.
of Denmark. And I still have hats that have Stockport written on the inside that came from Denmark. Well,
God's
originally
country.
Italy, but that's another story. So there you go.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean,
Stockport,
I'll be
mate.
honest. I didn't have anything to. Yeah, well, fingers crossed. We're in a final at Wembley on Sunday, and it's a
Yeah.
big game. But I'll be going down to London to watch them. But yeah, I used to just service the drinks machines, so I had nothing to do with making the hats, sadly. But I am a hat person myself. I do. I
Well,
do
there
wear
you
a lot
go.
of hats. But yeah, the hatters, as we're called.
But you're in
So
the right place.
yeah. Yeah, there's two hatters. There's the Luton and us. But I would say we're the better of the two. I'll cut all this out, me talking about Stockport, because people don't want to hear that, do they? But I'll leave your bit in. So, getting back to the sort of collaboration and the songs that you've made with John Carney. How much can you tell us about Power Ballad? Because that sounds fascinating. There's a few little wrinkles to that in terms of one of the singers not being a singer in real life, and there's so much that I've read about it that sounds absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it was an amazing project to work on. Really incredible. The Nick Jonas plays a boy from a boy band, shock horror, who's kind of like not washed up, but he's on his boy band have split up and he's on his way out, and his manager's trying to find him that big song that's going to save his career, and he's at a wedding in Dublin when he meets the Paul Rudd character who's playing in a wedding band, and the two of them have a bit of a piss up after the wedding, and end up back at Nick Jonas's, who's actually called Danny Wilson, believe it or not. The character is called Danny Wilson. That's a John Carney joke that made it through.
Little Easter egg.
Yeah, exactly. And so they go back to his like big hotel suite thing, and they start jamming ideas for songs. And you hear them jam a couple of different things, and then and Nick Jonas is wiped out on the couch, and Paul Rudd's playing this song on his guitar, and Nick Jonas goes, "What's that?" And that ends up being the big song, and it's the big song in the movie. You hear it a number of times. It was really hard to write because it had to do so much, like in terms of storytelling. It meant trying to be sure I don't give too much away, but like it means something completely different to Nick Jonas than it does to Paul Rudd, and also there's a scene that's like a first dance at a wedding, so it had to do mean a lot of different things to different people.
Ooh,
So it was a really hard song to write, and we must have tried it. Oh, I mean, it feels like 100, but it probably was at least 20 different things before we landed on that song, and it was right up against the wire. Like Paul and Nick were coming into Dublin like the following week, and we had to get it recorded, and so that was a bit of a panic, but we got something really good, I think, in the end.
The general conceit of the film, well, again, I'm not going to go into too. It's an area that I've always been really interested in, the world of songwriting, and I watched a documentary a few years ago on YouTube about the gentleman who laid claim to Robbie Williams' Angels.
Oh yeah,
an Irish gentleman, and I found that was a really, really interesting little piece of, almost like a sliding doors moment.
Yeah.
And this film, I don't think there's been a film that has covered that in this way. It feels very
I
unique.
don't think so. No, I mean it's funny though because I'm sure that particular story as well, because it's quite out in the public domain. That's probably gone into John's consciousness. But I've also told him loads of stories of, jiggery pokery, and not that I'm going to tell him here. I can't. But it's quite a common thing in the music business for people to play with credits and put names on that shouldn't be on, and not forget to credit people, and but I think you're right. I certainly can't off the top of my head think of anybody else that tackled that idea in a film.
It makes me think a bit about comedy, and somebody taking on a joke from someone and not really knowing they did it in a way, but they've heard it and then they put they put their own spin on it, passed it on to someone else, and then it was suddenly theirs. And the other person go, hang on a minute, that was my joke. And you hear that in comedy circles so much. It's totally a real bone of contention. I won't perform in front of this other comedian because he takes them. I guess that's the danger of sharing your creativity in an open space.
It's so hard because sometimes, though, like when you write a lot of songs, sometimes I get a good idea, but I'm going, is that something else? And even now with kind of Shazam and things, it's really difficult to figure out if you've just got something stored in your subconscious that's come out, or if it's original, I have found myself at times trying to find things and Shazam things and going, I'm sure it's someone else, and I can never figure out what it is. So I go, guess it's mine.
I suppose there's some things that are so universal that you can't lay claim to them because they're like as old as time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's not. Trust me, there's a limited number of notes.
So I meant to ask about that actually. Writing for an American character or even an American sense, does that change your instincts, like lyrically or melodically? Is there does it have to be more direct or no?
I will say that the big song that the story revolves around, it's called How to Write a Song Without You, and I had worked with Nick Jonas in the past. When I lived in Los Angeles, we'd actually written some songs together, and not for Nick, but for Delta Goodrum, who's another Australian. But Nick and she went out together for a while, and we wrote some songs together. So I knew Nick's voice really well, and that probably really helped when I was just sitting at the piano trying to come up with things. But I had no idea that Paul Rudd was actually a really good singer. And I Googled like mad trying to find clips. And a lot of the stuff that he's done in movies in the past, although he sounds really good, they're quite jokey and they're hamming it up, and it's quite difficult to tell, because he had to do a lot of singing in this. I mean, not just the original songs, but there's a lot of scenes of them when he's in the wedding band. So they play Hall & Oates, The Police, really hard stuff to sing, Thin Lizzy, Huey Lewis and the News at one point. And so there's a bunch of original songs, and then there's cover songs that he plays in the wedding band. And I had no idea. I found one clip of him singing Wichita Lineman, which is one of my favorite songs.
Beautiful.
And he did it really, really well. And I was like, okay, so he can really hold a tune. But it's not got a massive range in it, that song, so I wasn't sure, how high his voice would go or whatever. And we had to cut all the tracks before they arrived. So we went into Grouse Lodge, a studio just about an hour outside of Dublin. Great place, actually, with a band. And we cut all these songs and some more, because we weren't sure how many we would need at that point, like cover songs and some of the originals. And we cut them in 3 or 4 different keys, because I had no idea what kind of the top end of his range was going to be or whatever, And then we got into the studio in Dublin, because I had to basically grab those guys in between shooting days, you know. So if they didn't have a shooting day, I would zap over to Ireland. We had a studio on hold pretty much the whole time, and I would just sometimes go in for one day and record them in the afternoon and be home in the evening in Scotland. Sometimes it'd be a couple of days or whatever. But we had a lot of stuff to record, particularly with Paul, and he absolutely blew me away. He was amazing. And his voice is beautiful and warm, and he actually has a great range. He didn't struggle with any of the songs in the original keys. So I was like, I wasted all that time recording them all these different keys.
Well, I mean, the clues were there, weren't they, with him? You know, because he's always mentioning music, or I always think of him. You know, I slap at the bass. He says, "I slap at the bass," and one of and the things he's always popping up with, you know, some sort of musical instrument. But I've never even considered for a moment that he would be like someone who's.
Oh, he can play as well. He can play, and he actually has a great knowledge of music, and music that you wouldn't expect him to know about. He sort of knew a lot of Scottish bands and Irish bands from the 90s and the 2000s and stuff. I was like, wow, you know.
Oh, that's so cool. It's funny. It's probably my favorite film. One of my favorite comedy films of all time is Wet Hot American Summer, and he's just so good in that. He's just incredible. His physicality, and I guess that, you know, is it kind of ties in with musicianship as well, doesn't it? You know, kind of your body is your instrument.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I'm no actor, but one of the things that I felt about Paul was, and it's kind of weirdly relates to what we were talking about right at the beginning of this interview, but I actually think what you see on screen, the thing that makes people love him so much, is actually in the human being. He's not, you know, there's a huge chunk of him that's not act. Obviously, he has to be an amazing actor and to do all that stuff, and he is.
Yeah.
But what I mean is, there's a warm, funny, friendly, nice person in reality, and I think that comes through the screen, you know.
Yeah, no one's a good enough actor to fake that, I'm afraid. You can tell when someone's pretending to do that, can't you?
Yeah, that's true. It's not amazing. He looks like a total asshole.
I was going to ask you some kind of off-the-wall, quick-fire questions to finish off, because I'm really appreciative of your time and of your generosity to kind of share all this wonderful insight. And really, I've probably just rambled on so much about Sing Street because it's just means so much.
Well, I'm enjoying the interview very much, which is making me ramble on as well. So I'll try to be brief on the quick fires.
Well,
which I'm not very good at, actually.
Because a lot of your songs pop up in other people's TV shows or films. For example, I remember watching Peter Kay's Car Share. And I think it was Mary's Prayer that popped up, and he's singing along to it. I think. Have you ever been in a position where you didn't know something was going to appear on a song or a quiz or something like that, and you've gone, "Oh, that's me"?
Not really, because mostly they have to get permission beforehand.
I was thinking that, yeah.
So it comes through whoever the music publisher is. Like over the years, because I've had quite a long career, I've got different music publishers who were the publishers at that particular time. So they usually approach you and say somebody wants to use a song, and you know, it's kind of random what they pay for it. It depends on the budget of the film, and you've just got to agree it or not agree it. You know, I think the only people who don't have to do that is the BBC. And so actually, in answer to your question, I do remember somebody saying to me that I got played in the Queen Vic on EastEnders. I didn't watch EastEnders, but somebody said you were on the jukebox in the Queen Vic last night. So
how strange.
Yeah.
Have you ever turned down something from that then when you felt it didn't fit emotionally, like, or it was something, you don't have to say what it was if it was because I just don't like it and I don't want it in that thing, but or maybe it was an advert for something that you didn't want to be connected with, or anything really? Have you ever just gone, no, I'm okay, thank you?
Yeah, now and again, but it's less likely to happen. I mean, the the thing about a lot of stuff that goes on to in my career anyway, like Mary's Prayer or Danny Wilson stuff being an exception, but a lot of the stuff that I've had in films have been collaborations. So you have to get all, say there's three songwriters on it, just for the sake of argument. All three songwriters have to agree to the split's already agreed, but like the figure that they're offering for however long they want it in it, and you're never sure. You know, you've got to consider that other people might need that money. You know, and it's like so the we're more likely to go back and negotiate a bit more money from them than we are to say no. And I've never really had anything come at me that I would go, that's completely offensive. So it's just never happened.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm sure I would be exactly the same.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like back when I used to get a couple of pennies from YouTube. I don't anymore, but back when I used to get a couple of pennies from them, I always felt like it was really well earned, which
Yeah.
is ridiculous. It's not like I'm down a coal mine or something, but but yeah, I was like, I've earned that 3 pence, you know.
Earning that digital coin.
Yeah, exactly. I guess it's because it's aside from my day job, so it just feels like something extra, you know? It's
Yeah, totally.
or something I've forgotten about. So, which of I'm going to go back to Sing Street for a moment. Did you have a favorite character from Sing Street? For me, I mentioned Eamon was my favorite. I love the Elvis Costello, the bunnies, the deadpan. He's just my favorite, and Darren. But to be honest, all of them. But
I know.
he always stands out for me, Eamon. I just find him
Yeah,
a
I
really
love him.
interesting character.
That guy Mark that plays him just nails it. It's actually a really beautiful wee performance. It's great. I don't really have favourites because he just the thing is, and you said this earlier, but like it was just so well cast, and I actually think special mention to the wardrobe girl was. She's called Tiziana Corvassieri, I think I'm pronouncing that correct. But she absolutely nailed those 80s looks, but not just the 80s looks, that thing like you look like you're wearing your mum's coat or your mum's blouse. You know, it's not just the fashion of the day, it's what you're trying to do to be Duran Duran. And I think that Tiziana just completely nailed that. So she's going to get my special mention.
So good. I mean, I feel like I've mentioned every single song, and I'd be remiss to leave out "Girls" and "Brown Shoes" because, particularly that the performances on stage when they're in the prom, it's that they're great songs, they're powerful songs, but I think like that they synthesize a type. So like we were talking about, you know, that's reminds me of a Bowie song, or that reminds me, but it isn't.
Yeah.
What was in mind when you were writing Girls? What was the thought process of Girls?
Well, do you know what the original? Because that one started with John, and the original file that he sent me, i.e., like it wasn't an iPhone, it would have been an MP3 or something like that, but the original file that he sent me of a backing track was called Talking Heads. So we don't have to guess what John was thinking. Funnily enough, I was a huge Talking Heads fan, and I don't think it sounds that much like Talking Heads. But I don't. The world that he's in, you know, because it's got that kind of slightly spiky, and the bass being very separate from the guitar, and you know.
The way they play it as it's great. The way that they kind of, you know, shall we do this? Should we do this? And like it's the same with Brown Shoes, and it's like they're looking at each other. It's like, yeah, fuck it, you know.
Actually, I love Conor in that scene when he sort of embraces that whole androgyny is the word that I'm looking for. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, it's great. It's wild when you have a fantasy moment in a film where there's a whole, group of people all dressed perfectly, swaying and dancing, something, and then it cuts back to reality, and it's exactly like you remember your school disco, just people shuffling from side to side. And that reminds me. It's very much reminds me a bit of like a Father Ted or a Derry Girls, or
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
a
Yeah.
very Irish kind of cut
Yeah.
into reality, and it's kind of cold and awkward, and everyone's moving from side to
I
side.
mean, to be honest, I
Tickles me
think
that.
like my growing up in Scotland, I'm like a few years older than John, but we're not that far apart that we didn't pretty much have very similar experience as kids. We both had the school bands. We both started trying to write songs when we were really young, and did the school disco and all that stuff. So it was not a giant leap for me at all to get into those, that headspace. And I think it's probably why, our collaboration on that worked really well, because it was kind of like a little bit autobiographical for me as well, I mean, there was no Rafina, but but other than that, it's pretty similar.
Yeah, I think most teenage boys, story would be that minus the Rafine. Yeah, just the kind of longing for an imaginary.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think
Honest.
that's more the only thing from the film that doesn't feel like I mean, just the fact he walks over to her and talks to her at the beginning is something where most lads that age would just be like, oh.
Yeah, my favourite is that. It's another great scene when he looks back at Darren, who's leaning in on the fence, giving it.
Yeah, it's my manager.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I could literally break down every scene with you, and I hope I get to talk to you about this again at some point, because it's I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Amazing, Matt. Thank you so much. It's been great chatting to you. You know your stuff, which is always helps.
Well, it helps when I seek out people that I admire, and it means a lot to me that you've actually said yes to this interview. So obviously there's Power Ballad coming up. The musical of Sing Street is going from strength to strength.
Mm-hmm.
Can we expect to see it? It's not been in the north of England, has it yet?
No. Well, we did London, and then it got a really incredible reaction. And the producers at the moment are looking they're basically in the headspace of what's next. And I think they would love to because we were actually about to go on stage on Broadway, and I was there working on that when COVID hit. And the whole thing was shut down by COVID. And then, I mean, I won't get into it as quickly as possible. COVID had this really terrible effect on, we all know this, but like from the inside, trying to get a Broadway theatre back when you've lost it after COVID was absolutely impossible, because so many producers had shows in production, they've spent a load of money, and now there's no theatres. And it really took about 4 years for people to even start to get the confidence to go back into the theatre. And theatres were being very cautious in terms of how many people they didn't know, financially, but also because of COVID. They started off with a lot of shows that were just one man show or two headers or whatever, So not a lot of people on stage, and it's still recovering from that. So it's very difficult to get a theatre on Broadway or the West End or any of those things. But I know that the producers would be their dream, is to get it, but either on the West End or Broadway.
Of course.
And they would rather do that before they let's go touring with it.
Yeah,
so,
I'm just being selfish. I guess if it was in Scotland, it's just for me being in Cumbria, it's probably. I'm just thinking about me, really. If I could have this, if you could sort this out, just
exactly.
I could probably go up to Glasgow, maybe. If you had it there. It's I just want to say thank you, really. Thank you for this interview, and thank you for all the amazing songs. I know I showed you earlier on and my little Danny Wilson record collection.
That's a cool collection.
It is. And I was listening to them earlier on, and like I said, I think you see that DNA of the things I love then in the things that you're doing now. And
thanks,
that's
man.
really special. So thanks, Gary. I appreciate it.
It's been great to chat to you, Matt, and we'll do it again sometime.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Thank you.